Well, yesterday you would have heard the confirmation from the presidency that President Cyril Ramaphosa has now appointed Mcebisi Jonas as a special envoy to the US, essentially, I suppose, to discuss trade issues with the Trump administration. And then, overnight, both South African and then particularly American outlets reporting Jonas had referred to Trump as a racist, homophobe, and a narcissist. This was all back in 2020. He was actually delivering a lecture. And of course, if you go into the recent history of our relationship with the United States, you'll see the name of Ibrahim Rasool, and he was declared persona non grata for comments he made about Trump. Well, the special envoy to the US, Mcebisi Jonas, is with me now. He's a former deputy finance minister. You'll remember his history during the Gupta era, what he stood up to. You'll remember as well, of course, everything else that he's done since then. He joins us now. Mr. Jonas, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Good evening, Stephen.
You're a special envoy, so you're not an ambassador. What do you understand your role to be in all of this?
I guess, you're right. The special envoy is not an ambassador. It is somebody appointed to represent the president and government on specific issues. It could be economic and trade issues. It could be cultural issues. It could be resolving conflicts in some instances. But it is very specific and limited in terms of time and focus.
So is this specifically about trade?
It is. It covers. If you would have seen the announcement, it covers political, trade. It covers economic, broadly speaking, and it deals with all of the other dynamics and cultural issues of difference between South Africa and the US. I guess you could also look at it as a mechanism to use to kind of ease the environment for good diplomatic relationship between South Africa and the US, and they have paved the way for a more permanent appointment of an ambassador, as it were.
It's a tough job to represent South Africa in the United States right now. You have other jobs. You're chair of MTN, chair of a platinum mining company. Why would you take this job?
Look, look at it in multiple ways. On the one side, I think the U.S. relation with South Africa is fundamentally important to the national agenda for South Africa. It is important for our economy. It has also a history, so to speak. But also it's important for our relationship with other parts of the world. So look at it as part of, if you like, a broader economic, social, and cultural agenda of the country. In that sense, I think it's crucial. So it is really, for my part, contribution to driving national interest, so to speak. So that's the only purpose, really, if you ask my opinion.
All the people you're going to see now in the US, they all come from one party, and they all come from a party that supports the President Donald Trump. And back in 2020, you delivered the Ahmed Kathrada Memorial Lecture in that year. You described Trump as a racist homophobe, as a narcissistic right-winger. Now you have to deal with the Trump administration. Can you still deal with that?
I guess, and I must put that in context, because, at the time, I was outside of government. At the time, I was speaking as an activist, and I think these things happen. People move on, and confront the challenges of the time. I'm sure if you Google any politician has said something nasty about one other politician or the other. But the reality of the matter is that the challenge that we all face and the task at hand, it is to work on the relations between the two countries. And I think, firstly, I'm committed to doing that. But secondly, I think I've got the backing of government initially, but also of South Africans in general.
It's a tricky one. There are plenty of American politicians who now work with Trump who've said pretty bad things about him, and they've all had to sort of beg forgiveness or had to pledge allegiance or something. I'm no expert on American politics. It seems to me that they've done that. It seems to me he's looking for reasons to pick a fight with South Africa.
I wouldn't. I guess, let's accept that, our relations, the nature of South African relations and the souring predates the Trump administration. Because I think we must not make the mistake that most of the problems we have started suddenly with the Trump administrations. Most of the issues, whether are issues of trade, whether they are kind of economic relations issues, or whether to overlay that geopolitical issues, all of these issues predate the current administration in the US. So, in a sense, therefore, I think it has been something that South Africa has been engaged with for quite some time. And my task is to kind of understand what grounds have been covered, what has not been covered, what are the blockages, and also to understand the thinking from the other side so that we can frame our responses appropriately to deal with the challenges, so to speak. I mean, we believe, and I'm a believer, that the world is for all of us, and we must find commonalities and areas where we could work and strengthen the commonalities to achieve a greater good. And I think it's possible to do that.
So, I mean, a big part of me wants to believe that is true. But we know Trump holds grudges. He got a British ambassador fired because of something he had said. Do you still think it will be possible to actually do the job when, I mean, it's Breitbart News in the US, right wing support Trump. They were the ones who publicized the Ibrahim Rasool comments, etc. They're the ones running with it today.
Look, I'm not underplaying the challenge. The situation is complex, not because of what I said, but by its very objective nature, it is complex. And I don't think there are quick wins in it. I think it's a long slog where we kind of rebuild understanding and find each other on a number of areas, as it were. And I think there is basis for doing that. I think we've got in South Africa more than 600 companies from the US operating in South Africa. We still have a trade balance that is positive for South Africa. And so all of those things point to the fact that the basis for a long-term relationship is there. I mean, it's a matter of us working and dealing with some of the problems and challenges we have gone through over the past.
International relations and relationships between countries should be just that, relationships between countries. In some ways, our conversations with the United States have become personalized. Plenty of people in South Africa have said, plenty of Americans have said bad things about Trump.
I would argue, Stephen, that politics in general across the world have been over-personalized. And in South Africa, for that matter. I mean, in South Africa, we still say we went through the Mandela era as if everybody didn't exist in that period. We went through the Thabo era as if nobody existed in that period. We went through the Zuma era. That actually shows essentially there's always a tendency to over-personalize politics. The reality, though, is different. There is complexity. There is multiple personalities influencing the direction of where things go. And it does require, I think, for those who work in the policy space, for those who are negotiating, I mean, very sharp focus on what they are doing and understanding and patience to be able to get over the challenges they face.
I don't know if you've had time yet. I mean, this announcement is just 24 hours, 30 hours old now. Have you been able to speak to any people in the US to get their reaction to your appointment, to South Africans as well?
Look, I mean, at the moment, I think we're taking an approach that a lot of traffic from South Africa to the US has happened, and a lot of traffic from the US to South Africa has happened. I think our focus at the moment is to gather what are the key issues emerging out of that. And in a sense, also get a sense of what the thinking is within the presidency and the ministers and so on, government in general, and also business across the board, so that we consolidate our approach to the issues as we move ahead.
Okay, so I mean, obviously it'll be interesting to see. You're not in the US just yet. You're going to be quite careful about that, strategize a little bit. I mean, things are moving so quickly in the Trump era that maybe you don't want to rush.
We are in touch. I mean, with the developments in the US. I mean, we get constant briefing about the development. We are engaging at some level. But the point I'm making is that I think our primary task is at the moment to frame and understand what has been happening, but also to frame our approach to it. So that's I think our focus, so to speak, and also to build capacity. Because I think to do the job, I think it's not a one man's job, but I think we need to start building a capacity that can enable us to execute on the task that we've been given by the president.
One of the problems that I'm sure you're going to have is what I, as a South African, see disinformation about our country in the United States. That's become a big issue. could it be quite tricky to just get people to accept what the real facts are? That actually land isn't being taken without compensation, things like that. I mean, in other words, there's a lot of kind of groundwork, I suppose, an unfortunate thought maybe, but there's a lot of sort of behind the scenes work that's going to have to be done before any progress can be made, it would seem to me.
Already that work is happening already, I think, clarifying those issues and etc. But again, I mean, ultimately, I think, as they say, the pudding is in the eating. I guess when people start interacting more, you have bilateral traffic increasing at an official level between the two countries, and I think there will be an understanding, an enhancement of understanding. But fundamentally, though, for me, is the unity of South Africans around these issues. Because I think if South Africans are so divided, and I think that's part of the work that I think is happening at home at the moment, to try and find some common ground for South Africans and commonality of purpose and views. I mean, there's a saying that I think nations should have their differences ending at their shores. And I think sometimes South Africans carry them across the shores. And that's, I think, that we need to manage as we go along.
It looks quite difficult. I mean, if you looked at other countries trying to deal with the Trump administration, Canada is fighting an election on this very issue. The Mexican president, also relatively new in her term, suddenly dealing with all of this. I don't know what's going to happen. We had tariffs imposed last week, and then suddenly there was the tariff pause. How does a country like ours, a diverse country that is in our constitution actually the very embodiment of diversity, equity, and inclusion, as the Americans call it, an economy like ours, an open, medium-sized economy, how do we navigate what's going to be quite a difficult period, I think, in global history?
Look, I mean, I simplify things sometimes. I mean, because I think if you think about it hard, I mean, jobs are important for everyone, irrespective of your ideological orientation. Good education and good schools, I mean, they don't require ideology. Good health, public health system doesn't require ideology. And to have jobs and all of these things, you need revenue. Revenue is a product of a very good trade balance, I mean, as it were. So no matter where you're coming from, there is a baseline. I mean, that baseline goes beyond identity politics. It goes beyond race. It goes beyond cultural orientation. A job is a job. And everybody wants a job. Growth is growth, and it has to happen. And I'm saying sometimes I take a view, and particularly because South Africa is in coalition government now, in a government of national unity, actually, again, showing us that ideology in itself doesn't pay the bills. I mean, so there's something else that you have to do. I mean, you have to grow the economy, and you have to go and engage investors. You have to do all sorts of things to ensure that the economy is healthy. And that's the practical approach I take, to be pragmatic. The time, I think, for ideology is increasingly receding, I would argue. I mean,
It's a very interesting comment. Mcebisi Jonas, the Special Envoy to the United States, particularly on matters of trade and the economy. I really appreciate your time tonight on The Money Show. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes.